All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today to talk about climate education. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host. Today's webinar is brought to you by EdWeb and One Step, which is a video based, solution focused climate education curriculum for middle and high school students. All right. I think we've taken care of all of our housekeeping. Hopefully, everyone's settled in and ready to learn. So, I am excited to introduce Dr. Monica Burns. Monica is an EdTech and curriculum consultant and author of EdTech Essentials. She's a former New York City public school teacher, and we're happy to have her here with us today. She currently works with schools and organizations around the world to support pre K through 20 educators with thoughtful technology integration. Monica's website, if you're not familiar with it, is classtechtips.com. And she also hosts the Easy EdTech podcast to help educators place tasks before apps when promoting deeper learning with technology. So, welcome, Monica, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Emily. I am very excited to be here today for this session all about climate education and how to ignite student learning with engagement and action. As you heard, I am a former New York City public school teacher. I've been out of the classroom for several years, working with educators in different parts of the country and different parts of the world around technology integration. And my work in the classroom starting off in a very traditional environment with an overhead projector and chalk and a chalkboard and all of those great things, transitioned into a very tech friendly environment when we became a magnet school. And our magnet theme was environmental stewardship, which is one of the reasons that I am just pumped up to spend some time with you this afternoon. If you're joining us live East Coast, it's this afternoon or wherever you might be watching and whenever you might be watching today. So I taught in a classroom where we were always looking for the balance, really around the hands on learning experiences and making the most of digital tools and digital resources to make sure students had experiences that they could continue to build on as they moved through our upper elementary school environment into not just higher grades and into different spaces, but in their everyday lives. And one of my favorite visuals to represent that balance that we were so committed to comes back to that theme of environmental stewardship. In one corner of my classroom, I had a bin full of worms because we were composting. We were composting and using the banana peels, apple cores, you name it, things that came from the lunchroom or different parts of our snack during the day. And in the other corner of my classroom, was a cart of iPads where we were scanning QR codes before it was as popular as it is now to access differentiated content, where students were snapping pictures and creating videos and drawing and doing all sorts of creative things so that they could share their learning experiences both about our time, right? Diving deep into environmental stewardship topics, as well as things across the content areas. And that's really what we are going to focus in on and discuss today. Some of these connections, different ways to make the most of the time that you have with a group of students. And we're going to look at a few different core topics and some strategies that I think that you can customize for a large variety of learning environments. So today we'll talk about ways to incorporate climate education in different content areas. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. If you are able to access that attendee chat, you can let us know not only where you're from. I see so many folks from different parts of the country and different spots internationally too, but also what are you teaching or what are you working on this year? If you're teaching a particular subject area or grade level, if there's a content area that you're focused on, would love for you to add it to that attendee chat so that others who are joining in here, as well as myself, right, have a sense of what you are bringing to our conversation today. So feel free to let us know in the chat what content area, what subject areas, what grade levels you are working on. And I'll give some shout outs as you're responding to that question. Today, we're also going to discuss how to address student concerns about climate change through a solutions focused approach. That's something that we're going to look at together today, this solution focused approach, and where to go to find some resources that really highlight that approach. We'll talk about ways to inspire students by introducing them to climate change makers from around the world. And we'll look at some strategies to help you empower students to take action with creative projects that really capture their learning and elevate their voices too. And I see so many of you who are joining in today. You're teaching environmental science at the high school level, you're working in independent study schools, supporting all different curriculum areas. I see some folks teaching technology. So thank you for those of you jumping in and giving us a sense of what you're working on and what you're bringing to our conversation around this topic. So, what we are going to do together today is we're going to look at 5 strategies to engage and energize students through climate education. So, we're going to look at 5 strategies, some questions that you might bring just to yourself for your own planning, to your colleagues if you're planning collaboratively for this school year, and even into conversations with students when you are talking about climate education and the impact that they have. So, we're going to go through some of these strategies together, some considerations for you as you are planning independently, collaboratively with colleagues, and in discussions and conversations with students. And then we'll look at some favorite resources and activity ideas, some things you might want to take a screenshot of or bookmark as we go through. And I encourage you to use that chat area as we dive into these 5 strategies so that you are able to share your own favorite resources, your own favorite activity, something that's worked really well for you, right? In addition to those questions that you might have. And I'm going to have my eyes, I'll take a peek every now and then at that attendee chat to give some shout outs as you are sharing as we go through our strategies today. So, the very first strategy on our list of 5 is to take a solutions point of view. Now, taking a solutions point of view may be harder than it seems, especially for students who might feel like big things are out of their control, or they're hearing things that don't sound very positive, or they're not feeling like they can really make a big change. So, taking a solutions point of view is a really great place to start if you want to energize the content that you are teaching through climate education. And there's a few things you might do in order to truly take this solutions point of view. And the first component of this is truly to embrace a positive mindset. Now, embracing a positive mindset isn't that toxic positivity where we pretend like everything is perfect all the time, but it's about finding what's in our control. So you might ask students to tackle this question on their own in their own reflections in a small group or with a partner, or you might reflect on this yourself at first to think about your own mindset that you're bringing into the work you do when teaching with a solutions point of view. You might ask yourself, what is in my control? What is something that I can make an impact or move the needle with? And when it comes to climate education specifically, you might find that you're focusing on action items, identifying action items that are close to home, all right, and within your control. So you might ask yourself in that reflection and then bring that question to students. What can I do this week, this month, or this year, right, to make a change? So, a solutions point of view is really all about identifying what is in my control and then what action can I take. It might be a tomorrow action, it might be more of a long term with small things to go along the way. But that solutions point of view is all about what is in my control. Now, these discussion questions, these prompts that you might bring to students can translate into a variety of project ideas that you may want to tackle with the group. Now, these project ideas are ones that you can connect right back to your curriculum goals. We'll talk about that as we go through today, some of those curriculum connections, those standards connections that you might want to make, while at the same time showing students that there are things they can do, right? There are solutions that they can embrace, right, as they are looking at different things in their local community and with a wider lens. So, one thing students might try is planting a tree, right? I mentioned that compost bin experience from my very own classroom, but planting a tree and understanding the reasoning behind this may be something that students want to do or that you bring to students as an option for a small or large group. Now, on the screen here, you can see one of the resources that I love from One Step, just a really great example of going beyond just the idea and putting it into action. So you might have students go through steps to figure out what is it that they will need. Where is the best place for this, right? Connecting back to that idea of a solutions mindset, right? Taking that solutions point of view. I can make a change, right? And I can embrace that perspective, right? As I am moving through my day to day. You might find that you're looking for something a little bit different that also has a clear action item for students, right? You might decide that in addition to or instead of planting a tree, you might want students to come together for building a community garden. Now, right away, your wheels might be spinning, and you can let me know in the attendee chat there if these are things you've tried before or you're having a connection, right? Like I am about to share with you, right? You might find that building a community garden has plenty of cross curricular connections to students, whether it's measurement, right? Whether they are examining the weather systems, right? So many things to take into consideration. But at the same time, we're coming back to our big theme for today, which is really about the energy that you're bringing to a group of students, right? Igniting that student learning engagement while helping them take action. Building a community garden could be just that thing, right? To help support students to see that they can have truly, right, a solutions mindset as they are moving forward. Now, one of the examples I gave right from the start with that picture of that bin from the classroom that I taught in for several years, right? You might start composting in your school, big or small, right? This could include a bin just like mine with some air vents and some newspaper clippings, right? And those worms that arrive just in time for us to place in some of our snack waste right in there. Or you might find that this is something that starts small and is ready to scale much wider in your school community or in your community at large. Perhaps that means you're setting up families for success, right? Or sharing ideas, or even letting them know about the types of composting initiatives that may be happening already in their community. Now, I know where I live in a city in an urban environment where we have drop offs for our composting that we can do. So I don't have a backyard with a bin in it, at least not right now, but I know exactly where I can go with my orange peels, with coffee grounds, you name it, right, for composting. So even having students understand what exactly this entails is something you might do coming back to a big commitment you have for that solutions perspective, perhaps with those 5 R's, right? One of which reducing food waste is something you might want to do. So I'm showing you a screenshot here from a great multimedia resource. So if you're finding that it's hard for students to really wrap their head around what is possible, right, or what it might look like to even tackle something like this, right, you might find some really great videos that help bring a concept to life, like these Stomp Out Carbon videos, a great example, right, of what students can do that really help them take on that solutions perspective, right, as they work towards something a bit larger. So, number one on our list of 5 strategies is to take that solutions point of view. The next one is to look at the science of the problem and whether you are teaching science with a list of standards that you're tackling this school year, or you're looking to make some connections to what is happening perhaps in the other parts of the day that your students encounter, you might find that the best entryway to tackle some of these big ideas is to look at the science of a problem with a group of students. So this might include asking some questions that they are going out to research, that they are interviewing someone or gathering information, right, to learn a little bit more about it. Or perhaps you are finding great high quality resources for students to explore on their own independently or with a partner. And then you, as the curator, sharing these great resources, are helping them dive into some of these questions. So you might start by having them determine the cause of the problem, asking, why is this happening? And if they focus on this, why is this happening, right, throughout their research, it might take them to this next piece, which is research the solutions. What innovative ways are we as a society tackling this problem? So, in addition to having students look at the problem, and that may be the focus at first, right, of their research, you can also have them research the solutions and the different ways, because we know there isn't often just one, but there's often many ways to tackle a problem. And they can examine what people are doing in different parts of the world or maybe their own backyard to research solutions for a particular problem. So, what does this look like as students are conducting research? What kind of projects can you do? What types of action items might you bring to a group of students? Well, you might ask them to do a few different things. And I've got some general ideas that I think you can tweak depending on the group of students you are working with. And the first one is to have students research, go out, right, find information on the science of a problem and showcase their findings. And one of my favorite types of creative products, so it's more than just having students, right, ingest information, right, or read information, but that ability for them to demonstrate their learning in creative ways, right? One of my favorite and sometimes underrated ways of doing this is with an infographic. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat if you've used infographics with students before. Infographics are fantastic visual representations of information, including research. And students might have seen these in the types of materials that they consume themselves. Maybe they've seen a great fact sheet and they're then using that information to turn it into an infographic. Or perhaps they've conducted a survey and they're taking those results and putting it into an infographic, using an icon, using imagery to represent their data. So, infographics don't always get as much love, right, in terms of a creative product. I'll talk about some more of my favorites like videos and things that tend to be a bit more popular creative products. But an infographic is something you can make with students. Even if they can't name it, they may have seen it. And there are many tools, including free tools, you can use to help students create infographics using templates. So I don't think I see anyone in the attendee chat just yet giving a thumbs up to having done infographics before. So if you haven't used an infographic as a creative product to showcase student research, perhaps you have an idea on how you might use one that you want to share with us here in the attendee chat. So here you can see on my screen, I'm showing Adobe Express. I saw Seth there in the chat say Canva as an option. I see that coming through again. Yep, Shoshana, another one, right? Another thumbs up for that. So plenty of great places to go for templates for infographics, where you can search for an infographic and students can put in the information that they've found, their research, their fast facts, the responses to the survey they've given, right? Any kind of information that they want to spotlight as they look at the science of a problem into an infographic product. This is something that's quick, shareable, and there's lots of pre-made templates. I see some favorites right there in the attendee chat that you can use with students that help mirror some of the content that they are consuming, just like this example here where I showed this awesome methane fact sheet, one great resource from the folks at One Step, right? They can, of course, use a tool to replicate the same type of graphics to make something that goes along with their own research too. Another way that students might dive into this idea of examining or looking at the science of a problem is to watch videos in partners to unpack what they've learned. Now, oftentimes, if we watch something, right, whether it's a silly video someone has sent us or something on a big screen at our home or out at a movie theater, right, we see a video, we want to talk about it. Right, although we might watch a quick tutorial on our own, right, to solve a problem in our house. If something's making a funny noise and we YouTube, how do we fix it? We often watch videos with the intent of talking about what we've learned. And we can replicate this with students, having them watch videos in partners to unpack a big idea like this Drink the Fog video, right? Maybe one that you share with them, and having them unpack what they've learned, right? What it is that they are seeing, right? In partners to talk about what it is that they are watching and learning about and really researching together. Now, not only might you introduce videos as a piece of content that you want students to consume, right? Wonderful multimedia content available for them to watch and learn from. You might also use this medium as inspiration, right? You might share a short video clip for partners or a whole group of students to watch, and then you might ask them to go off with their own research and use that video that they learned from as an exemplar for their own project, right? For their own creation. So you might ask students to respond to a viewing, right, on video. They've watched something in partners and now they're going to respond to something that they viewed on video, mirroring that same content that they have consumed. And there's plenty of great video tools that they could use to mirror this. They might use a tool that's great for collaboration or having everyone share their videos easily, like Flip from Microsoft would be one example where students can create a quick video to share. But what this really comes back to is responding to something that they've learned, something they're researching, maybe watching on their own or with that partner in the same type of medium that they're consuming. A great way to engage students in content that they are learning about so that they can share their learning with a wider audience. So, number two on our list of 5 strategies is to look at the science of the problem. And that brings us to number 3, where there are people who are looking at the science of a problem, who are taking that solutions mindset. And another strategy to help students really engage with content in a deep way to understand the impact that it has, right? To energize students through climate education is to share innovative change makers. Now, I don't use that term change maker lightly, right? This is someone who is really moving the needle, right? Who is making a change. And although it might seem like it has to be someone everyone knows about, right? Someone who is notable that anyone in the world might know, a change maker, right, could be someone who is making small incremental changes in their community that will have a very long-term impact. And so sharing innovative change makers, ones that again are super notable or are not quite as widely known, right, is a great way to engage students with climate education. And if you have a change maker on your mind, maybe it's someone everyone knows about, or maybe it's someone in your community you want to give a shout out to, feel free to add it into our attendee chat. So if you've got a change maker, this is something that you might want to give a shout out to, someone who comes to mind. Maybe your school is named after that person, or they've come to visit your school, right, as a guest speaker. Or it might be someone that no one else on the call has heard of, but is important in your community. Now, innovative change makers and focusing on these folks can really help students wrap their head around what is possible. So, in addition to simply right sharing a name or a list, I see some coming in already on that attendee chat. You might want students to really identify the inspirational features. What is it about that person, right, that really sets them apart? So you might ask students to locate, right, who is at the forefront of, and they might have a specific area of climate education that they are thinking about more deeply, that is high interest for them, right? Or you might look more generally, right? Who is at the forefront of climate education more widely. So, no matter where you focus in with students on right, research of this person or the handpick ones that you share, I see more names coming through that attendee chat, right? You might ask them to really identify those inspirational features and ask who is at the forefront in a movement that is important to them. Once they've located a person or two, or you've shared a few people for them to pick and choose from, you might ask for them to research that person's background. What have they done or are they doing? And how did they get there, right? How did they get to a place where they really could make that type of change? So, having innovative change makers as a focus area for your students to really understand, right, what is possible, right, is a great way to get them to engage with climate education and feel perhaps a personal connection to someone, especially if you choose a change maker to focus on who is local and maybe even accessible, right, or available to visit a space that you inhabit. Now, as you can imagine, right, when you are doing this type of research, as we think about some different project ideas, there are plenty of connections to what may already be happening in an ELA classroom, right, in a science classroom, in a math classroom, as you are gathering data, right, about different people. And so, some project ideas that you might decide to explore could include research and share a change maker. Maybe you want students to find primary source documents that also connect to your social studies goals and research someone who has made a big change in the past. Or perhaps you want to share with them short video clips that really celebrate innovation in different parts of the world. This EcoBoats story is a really great one that the folks at One Step have profiled and shared right on their platform. There may be stories that students have heard right in a current events class, right, or when they're working on different current events, or it may be something that they're pulling from a different part of the world. Maybe there's a spot, a geography that really interests them, and they want to find someone from that space that so they can learn a little bit more about. So, although you might share a few change makers, you might ask students to conduct some of this research themselves. And if they have found someone to spotlight, found someone to profile, you might ask them to create a change maker profile. Now, a change maker profile is a type of activity that you can tailor to a wide range of students. You might work with a group of middle school students and you're asking them to share some fun facts, some interesting tidbits, right? Some information about someone that they've researched. You might work with a group of high school students and you're asking them to analyze a few different people who fall into a change maker category, synthesize that information, and come up with a profile of the type of person or what makes a change maker. Now, for a change maker profile, students can present or share the information that they gather in lots of different ways. I'm showing you here a template from the tool Canva. This is a presentation deck template. I loved this example because it really sets you up with some adjectives to describe someone, right? So, although this is one on character strengths, I changed it to a change maker profile, right? And you might have students say, these are the types of adjectives that describe someone who is a change maker. This is what they have to do, right, in order to fit a change maker profile. And you might have students, right, create something that almost acts as a way to check and see if someone truly is a change maker, sharing some great examples from their research and presenting it to a group. Now, you might have them make a presentation like this one, something they could share in Google Slides, right? Or turn into a video content, something that goes along with the research that they've conducted. Or you might find that you want them to keep it a little bit more local. Perhaps interview a local change maker, someone who's made a big difference in your community. And if you're wondering how to find someone who is a local change maker, it might be easier than you think. You might have students start to examine problems in the past and ways that they've changed in your community. Kind of those, have you noticed that there's way less garbage on the corner, right, of our street? I wonder who's responsible for those brand new garbage cans or for setting up a new schedule for garbage pickup. Or I wonder who helped make sure that our school has these shiny new recycling bins to kick off the school year, right? These are those local change makers. I see Lisa there in the attendee chat saying, right, even a small difference, right? Someone who's on the right path, right, is someone we could profile here by interviewing a local change maker. Now, I kept this concept of interview kind of broad here on my slide that I'm sharing with you, but you could turn this into a podcasting project with students where they are bringing out some equipment or maybe just having a tablet or smartphone ready to record an interview with someone who's sharing their story. Or perhaps you're having students create a video interview, turning it into a QR code and making an interactive bulletin board that's going to spotlight that local change maker and really celebrate their accomplishments. So, when it comes to number 3 on our list of strategies, our strategies for making sure that you can truly engage and energize students through climate education this year, number 3 is all about sharing innovative change makers. And this could be something very big, right? Or it could be something that feels really nice and close to home. Number 4 on our list of strategies is to make connections across the curriculum. And I have to say, right, that I've already touched upon this a little bit. We're going to look at it more thoughtfully, right, as our number 4. But you've already heard me make some connections to ELA classrooms, math classrooms, social studies classrooms, science classrooms, right? So many different ways that you can connect this big concept of climate education across the curriculum. And if you have ideas or stories or things that you've done that's been successful or things that you're thinking of for this school year, please add it to that attendee chat so that others can see and learn from your experiences and your ideas too. Now, making connections across the curriculum might feel a little intimidating at first, but once you take that pause to really look at what you'd like to accomplish over the course of a school year, it might be easier than you think. And I speak from the experience of teaching in a pretty traditional upper elementary school. I taught fifth grade for several years in a very traditional public school, traditional curriculum. And we shifted to a magnet school, as I mentioned at the very top of the podcast, with the theme of the webinar, to the theme of environmental stewardship. And we then paused to say, this is not a standalone. This is not 20 minutes of our day. This is something we can really incorporate across the curriculum. And there are some strategies that we did this did to make sure that this happened and that it felt authentic and not forced. It really was something that complemented the work that we did through this thematic curriculum. So, a few things that you might want to do. You might first start by reviewing your standards, even asking yourself, right, sitting down with colleagues to say, what am I teaching this month, right? It's September, almost halfway through. If you're with me live today, you might watch this later in the school year and you might say, what am I teaching this month? What's coming up in this next unit of study? Reviewing your standards and your curriculum goals. And then you might ask yourself, what is it that students are most interested in? So you can also connect to student interest. One of the reasons that I love this topic so much is that it truly can engage and energize the work that you're doing, connecting to student interest. And even ask yourself, what examples can I share or projects can I develop that connect to high interest topics? Now, for the first question, you might say, I have the answer, right? I have my list or my PDF on my screen right now as I'm watching Monica that goes through everything that I'm teaching this month. But that next one, right? What is a high interest topic for students? That might not feel like something you're as ready to act on if you haven't spent some time talking with students just yet. If you're really in that early stages of the school year, you might not be exactly sure what are the high interest topics for your group. So it's a good opportunity to create a survey. You might use some open ended responses if kids feel like they're going to be ready to talk about things they're interested in, or you might even give them a ranking or a few options to choose from, like a multiple choice response, so they can start telling you what they're most excited about. And this might be just what you need in order to help you narrow in on the type of project ideas that infuse this idea of climate education alongside your ELA standards, your math goals, what you'd like to accomplish in science and social studies, you name it. So, for the project ideas that you may want to investigate that go along with very common goals that we see across grade areas, is specific types of writing. So, you might have a particular writing piece. Maybe it's persuasive, maybe it's informative, maybe it's writing to entertain, right? You might have a few different authors' purpose, if you will, that you're working on this year. And one that you might want to think about is having students engage in persuasive letter writing. And the audience for a persuasive letter could vary greatly. It could be someone who is far away or someone who is close to home. And I use the term letter writing because it's the more traditional way we think about this, but you might also have an email that you have students write or a social media campaign that you help them devise. You could take this persuasive writing piece in a few different directions. Now, if you're looking for inspiration for what it might mean for students to write persuasively, I definitely encourage you to check out some of the awesome pledges as well as just the general fantastic multimedia content from the folks at One Step. So you might have students go ahead and watch a great video, feel called to take action themselves, and then perhaps write that persuasive letter that goes along with it. You might also decide that you want students to collect and analyze data themselves. That's a great opportunity to connect to math goals that you might have for students. You might have them create their own survey, right? Collect data, analyze that data, and present that data in a few different ways. I mentioned infographics earlier, but if you've used Google tools, I know I'm a big fan of Google Slides, for example, which is what I use to create this deck for you today, right? You might also try out something like Google Sheets, having students collect and analyze data in the spreadsheet format, create graphs that go along with it, and you might find that that connects back to your goals for data in a math classroom, right? We're thinking creatively around the content specific goals that you have and highly engaging content within this big umbrella of climate education, right? There's plenty of connections that you might make. You might also find that you want students to create something like a public service announcement, another way for them to share information with a group or with an audience, right? This is a good opportunity for students to create something similar to what they've consumed themselves, right? Perhaps it's that multimedia video, perhaps they're watching different public service announcements, and now they are creating their own. So, lots of directions that you can go in for something like this. And if you're not exactly sure, again, where to start, I would encourage you to take a look at your standards, right? You might find that the content on a particular platform like One Step, for example, right, really helps set you up for success with some of these standards aligned activities. Or you might find that you are stepping into a different subject area, different content area, and finding that these connections have really been there all along to understand what students are most excited and interested in. So, of the four strategies that we've looked at so far, right, we've thought about ways to help students understand what is out there, see what is possible. And we want to make sure that not only do they see that next step that they might take, right, that science of a problem and that solutions mindset, and not only understand that there are change makers to use as inspiration, but also to help students see themselves as leaders and change makers. And this is something that you can start with this mindset shift right from the beginning of the year. So, if you know that you have students who are ready to tackle big or small challenges, you can start using some of the same language that we've used today to describe change makers, to think about solutions first, that you might help students really see themselves as change makers this year. So, one way to go about this with your group is to help them set short and long term goals. So, starting right at the start of the year, perhaps you have, right, something students are working on in a shorter term, just a month, just 6 weeks, but then longer term goals of what they want to accomplish during the school year and maybe during their whole time, right, at a school building, right, or working in your community. So, you might ask them questions like, what can we accomplish together? And really see their goals as not isolated or just for them, but for the group that you are working with together. And you've heard me mention this already today, but I think it's so important as we talk about students seeing themselves as leaders and change makers in this space is to truly celebrate big and small moments. It can be tempting to save a celebration really to the end when we have something that we feel like we're unveiling or revealing, but we can also celebrate those small moments. You might think of them as the process, right? Small moments along the way to help build up to that bigger celebration and help kids really get to those big moments. So you might ask yourself or your colleagues that you plan with, when can we carve out time to spotlight student and class accomplishments? And this is something that you might say you are committed to. And I'm a big believer if we don't put it on the calendar, right, it doesn't get done, right? Whether that's a small personal task or a big professional one, right? So you might say, we're going to carve out time every Thursday after lunch, right? Every Thursday, sixth period, right? This is what we're going to do, right? To really make sure we carve out time to spotlight student and class accomplishments, even if we're not at the end or the finish line, right? We are working our way there. So there's a few different project ideas you might want to consider when it comes to helping students see themselves as leaders and change makers. And one is to have them take and maybe even create their own pledges. A pledge is something that can feel really tangible. It's something where you are making a commitment towards something. One of the things that I do, and I've reset it for this back to school season for myself, is right up on my refrigerator. I have my list of things I am pledging to do over the course of the week, making sure I drink enough water, making sure I make it right to this activity or hit so many steps each day, right? I'm pledging or I'm making a commitment to myself, right, for those moments throughout my week. And I'm keeping track of them too. So you might find that students take part in a pledge right? They say, this is what I am going to do. I am making this pledge, not just in front of myself, but also right in front of my classmates. And you might even have them create pledges that are really specific to the school community or the spaces that you inhabit. This is a great way for them to take ownership of a initiative, right, by creating that pledge and encouraging others to stand up and support it. You might have them share that, right, and incorporate those commitments with their own family and community. I know I've mentioned the fantastic resources on One Step's website, and that's a great place to start if you're looking for some ideas and inspiration, right? You might decide that you want students to see themselves as change makers through certain actions, such as starting a green club, right, in the community, right? And you might find that this is something that they're inviting others into. And you might find that you are going to have students commit to something that really goes on a journey, like the My Plastic journey, where students can track how they use plastics, right, over the course of the week. And this might be something that they see as just for them at first, but then they bring to the larger community as part of those action items and the making change that they are committed to. And one piece of this journey that I think is so important, especially for students to see themselves as change makers, is to truly take time for reflection, not only at the beginning, right, or saying, what is it that I want to do to make a change, but also throughout the process of helping others move in that direction too, right? So I love this idea of really making sure that we're incorporating time for reflection. What is easy? What is hard about the commitment that a student is making, and what changes, big and small, are we seeing along the way? So, as we think forward and what you want to do next, right? What it is that you want to take action on, maybe your wheels are spinning already. I want to recap these 5 strategies for you. And I love for you in the chat to let us know what stands out for you. What is something that you could see yourself putting into action in your school community, in your classroom, right at this start of the school year, if you're joining us live today? So, of these 5 that we looked at together, we started with taking a solutions point of view. That's where we really ask ourselves, right, and ask students to identify what is in their control. This might be exactly where you start with a group, right, that taking a solutions point of view. Or you might ask students first to look at the science of a problem. This is a perfect place to start if you want students to identify something that's happening and research solutions. Or you may decide that you want students to learn about, to research innovative change makers. Perhaps you are the one who is curating some content and sharing some new names with folks. Or you might decide that you are asking students to go out and research and find out what's happening, maybe even interview a local change maker in the community. Or you might find that your first place to start is to make connections across the curriculum. I shared how powerful that experience was for me as a classroom teacher, right? Reviewing my standards, looking at what we wanted to accomplish, and of course, listening into students to see what they were super excited about. And then, of course, our number 5 on the list, which is to help students see themselves as leaders and change makers. An important part of this process is helping them understand that they can take action themselves, that there are things that are in their control, and they truly can be those same change makers they might see celebrated in different parts of their day. So, if you are ready to take action after today, I encourage you to do what I like to do, which is to have something time sensitive so I could really put ideas into action. So, maybe this week you're going to look for some great videos that help explain big concepts to students. Maybe this month of September, you're going to put a survey out to students to see what they're most interested in. And perhaps this year, you're really committed to having students take a pledge and create a pledge or chronicle a journey their own with a video or with a podcast or some sort of very shareable format. So I want to make sure that we get a chance to hear from all of you. I've got my eyes in that attendee chat as you are putting in your this week, this month, this year commitments. So feel free to share anything there that comes to mind. And I'll pass it back over to Emily before we jump into some Q&A.
Yes, we've definitely got some great questions that have come in. So, folks, keep sending them in and we'll get them into the queue for Monica. And thank you, Monica, for sharing all of these great ideas and examples of using climate education to empower and engage our students. It's got my wheels turning for sure. I'm super excited. Monica did show you several examples of lessons and activities from One Step, who is our sponsor of the webinar today. And we're excited to offer anyone who joined us today access to One Step to use with your classes free for 30 days. It's not a dumbed down version of the product, it's full access to the product for 30 days. And you can try out those videos that Monica previewed for you, the pledges, the activities. There is so much great stuff within One Step that we're excited to have you educators in there and using it with your students. So we're putting the link where you can sign up to start that 30-day free trial. You will first have a quick conversation with Lori Hill. So we put her email address in chat as well. Or you can go to that bit.ly link to sign up for a quick chat with Lori. And then she'll get you all signed up and set up with that 30-day free trial. So we're excited to offer that to you. And then we also have a fabulous playbook that we want to share with you that includes more strategies and resources to teach climate science, including access to that lesson plan that Monica mentioned with the eco boats, which is a really fascinating story and a great example of just local change makers seeing a problem in their community with pollution and doing something really innovative to fix it. So we have put a link in chat where you can download that playbook as well. And we hope that you'll use that along with all of the great suggestions that Monica provided today. All right, let's go ahead and get to some of the questions that have come in. And again, keep putting those into the questions and we'll get them into the queue. So folks really loved that infographic idea, and we're definitely sharing different ways to create those. Someone was wondering if you had any suggestions for technology beyond Canva and the Adobe Express. They find both of those interfaces a little bit cumbersome for their students. I didn't know if you had any other technology suggestions there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what first off, I would say look at what tools you already use and what you're comfortable with, because there may be some ways to use it to create infographics. Maybe they have a template. If they don't, you might be able to do a quick workaround. So, one example is Google Slides. If you already use Google Slides with your students, it might not look like an infographic, right? It has that presentation view. But what you can do in the upper left hand corner, where it says page setup underneath the file menu, is you can change the dimensions. So you can make it look like an infographic. So it might be a little funky if you try to print it on first go. You might want to play around, but if you're doing it totally digitally, you can set up the slide to look nice and tall and long like an infographic, and students can insert images, they can add shapes, they can put text on it. So that's a really great place to start. I'm giving slides as an example because I know it's such a popular presentation tool, but you could do the same thing changing the page setup or the way the document is set up in PowerPoint. You can do that in Keynote. So if you have a presentation software that your students already are familiar with, that's a great place to start for creating an infographic.
Yeah, I personally do that. I use the heck out of Google Slides. It's so flexible. So great suggestion. Um, why do you think being a leader slash change maker is important for this topic? And does it differ in any way with climate education from other subjects?
I think it's really important for students of all ages to see what's possible and feel empowered, not only in their classroom, but in their community, right, at large. And one of the things I love about celebrating students as change makers is they can see that they don't have to be on the news, right, or with a million TikTok followers to make an impact, right? That there is that ability to make changes in their community that are long term, right? Even if they are just working at it for a small moment. So I don't think that this has to be only, right, in a climate education environment, right? You might have students who are working in other areas, making change in different ways, and that's worthy of celebration too. If you are looking to set up students for success to help see themselves as change makers, it can be useful to do a change maker profile activity, like I shared early on, to share some great examples of what a change maker looks like, what they do, right, what they accomplish. And that can really help students see themselves, right, in that role. So, also a good opportunity to highlight diverse stories, right, and change makers from a variety of backgrounds.
Yeah, that's great. I think that just really gets to the empowering part of this conversation, where students feel like they have
Mhm.
power to make change and not passive in these things. Great. Well, we do know that climate education, climate science, climate change can be sensitive issues amongst some families and some communities. Do you have any suggestions for how educators can help navigate this and maybe help navigate some of the confusion that students may have because they hear so many differing thoughts and ideas around this topic?
Yeah, I think really anchoring conversations you have in community action is a great way to drive change, right? Is to let people see what a difference can happen, right? If you are building a community garden and you're tasting those tomatoes, right? Your conversation is going to be a little
Mhm.
bit different than simply watching, right, a video without that hands-on experience. So if you can partner really great content with an action item. Maybe you don't have to taste it like a tomato or a strawberry, right? But that you are really participating in something special. I think it changes the dynamic of any conversation you would have really on any topic. And another piece to that too that I think is crucial is that there's plenty of transparency, right? That there's opportunities for everyone to participate, right, in community events, right? That everyone is on the same page in terms of the types of resources that's being shared. So nothing feels like it's, just for this moment or just for that moment, but it's part of everything that we're doing. It's such a natural component of a classroom environment and getting people to participate, right? Handing them the shovel for planting the tree or whatever it might be,
Yeah,
right? Is a nice way to make sure that they know their voices are heard and valued.
yeah. Back to that empowerment part of things. But yeah, I think so many of us learn best when we can be hands on with things and personalize it in that way where we really have the experience ourselves. Like you said, great to pair with the videos and the book learning and the lectures, those types of things. Let's see, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So, what role do you think media literacy plays in climate education? Do you think that's a good pairing? And just harkening back to a chat, we did have someone say that they actually pair climate education with civics and civic discourse. So, I thought that was a neat cross curricular connection too.
Yeah, and just like climate education doesn't have to stay in one part of the day, right, or in one subject area, I believe the same thing is true with media literacy, right? It's part of all of the interactions that we have in online spaces, whether we are researching something in a math classroom or a science classroom or a social studies classroom. So I do think there's a great opportunity to look at where sources are coming from, right? To examine photos to see if they were used with generative AI or if it was a photo that someone snapped and just added a filter to, right? So there's an awesome opportunity in so many of the spaces that we inhabit, right, in education to bring in media literacy conversations, and this is a great opportunity to do that too.
Yeah, I think there's so many cross-curricular connections and with this topic. So thanks for sharing that. Well, we are coming to the end of our time together. Just another reminder that we are offering access to One Step free for 30 days, and we'll be sending out an email to make it easy to take us up on that offer. And we want to thank Monica so much for being here with us today and sharing your expertise and experience and all of these great resources. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who joined us and all the great ideas that you shared as well. Thanks again, everyone, for being here with us today. We hope that the school year is off to a great start and that what we've shared today is helpful to you as you continue working with your students. We appreciate all you do.